College Football Inquirer with Steven Godfrey. I am Andy Staples. Ross Dellinger and his delightful collection of beanies are sitting on an airplane on the runway somewhere.
Andy, guess what I'm excited about? I'm going to throw the transition your way.
Okay.
It's the playoff of the G5, my friend. We're on the cusp of greatness.
Yeah, because it might not just be one G5 team getting in.
Correct.
This is the first time since the college football playoff started doing rankings, since the college football playoff has existed. Because remember, it's 4 teams for 10 years.
Right.
This is the first time what happened at the bottom of the rankings might have been the most interesting thing that happened in the rankings.
Absolutely.
James Madison is your number 25 team. North Texas is your number 24 team. That does not matter as much because we presume that the winner of the American Championship game is in. The presumption is they are the 12 seed, but don't assume that because the ACC Championship game will determine that. If James Madison beats Troy in the Sun Belt Championship game, and Godfrey, James Madison is a 22.5-point favorite over the Trojans in this game.
Feels likely.
If they beat them, and then if Duke, that's right, 7-5 Duke topples Virginia in the ACC Championship game.
Not impossible.
The committee has already told us what's coming.
Andy, did you enjoy seeing the new little logos instead of playing through the joke that they have been for the last couple of weeks of, it might be Miami? No. I think the committee understands the gravity of the situation. So,
I don't think the committee understands anything. I think ESPN's production team was like, that's
fair.
This is stupid.
We're going to confuse people.
They've essentially just told us Miami's out.
Yeah.
So we can't keep putting Miami there.
We can't keep putting Miami in there just because people are going to write letters. Not that people write letters anymore. So here is the doomsday scenario for a sicko like myself, a college football hipster. Your America's Duke Blue Devils. They beat Virginia this week in the ACC Championship. James Madison, as the favorite, beats up on Troy in the Sun Belt.
Yep.
And your Brigham Young Cougars pull a decent-sized upset in Dallas over Texas Tech. In this scenario, and if you're just listening to this, just don't worry about the bracket, but just know this. There's 12 teams in the college football playoff. 4 of them, we're talking about 2 Group of 5 champions, most likely, and 2 teams from the Big 12. You want to talk about bracket
0
busting?
from the ACC.
And 0 from the, I believe it's 32-team ACC that spans 11 time zones. So once again, and I'll stop being glib in a second, but right now I'm enjoying myself. Once again, we've seen an adjustment made just in the second year of the bracket. We have seen the intention of the Power 2 to try and obviously flood as many teams as they can get in. In this case, really, I think our conversation is probably going to head more towards Notre Dame and certainly Miami, which kind of feels like the program destined to complain the loudest and maybe have the best quality football case of the schools that are probably going to be left out.
They absolutely do. They beat Notre Dame. They have the same record, and their resumes are incredibly similar.
So I pose to you before we get into the specifics, isn't a version of this going to happen every single year? We can talk seriously about this in a second, but how funny would it be with all of the different machinations that have gone on to move this sport in a particular area, and you would end up with 2 Big 12 teams and 2 Group of 5 conference champions playing on December 19th and 20th. I can't wait. That'd be fantastic. Well, one of those Big 12 teams, actually, no, because if BYU beat Texas Tech, they both fall to the first round. Those teams wouldn't get a bye.
Nobody's getting a bye in there. They're both playing in that first weekend. So yes, that is true. And Duke, because you're probably asking, why aren't you envisioning a scenario where Duke wins the ACC and makes the playoff? Because Duke lost 5 times. One of those losses was to UConn. Now, UConn was good, but UConn is an independent that really has 0 resource. Like, UConn had a great season and lost its coach to Colorado State.
Transitive loss to our Delaware Blue Hens. Just want to shout those guys out. Apparently, they're sending us gear. Just want to throw that out there. All right. Boy. Andy, I have questions. We can dwell on this 2-team G5 thing all day long, and I would love to just because of the big smart.
I'm going to send you down a hipster rabbit hole later.
Okay.
But I understand what pays the bills.
Yes.
So let's talk about power conference teams.
Let's ask some questions here. In the middle bubble range. I don't know if are we using bubble now in football? Yeah, we got bubble teams. We got bubble teams, right?
There's actually a healthy bubble this year.
Right.
So yeah,
let's talk about bubble teams like Texas and Miami and BYU and Notre Dame and maybe Alabama. And this is where I'm going to lead you to my first question. Surely they're not going to punish conference championship game participants this year, are they?
Like the way your eyebrow goes up after you say surely, is amazing.
Sorry. Well,
I wish I could do that with one eyebrow.
Yeah, I can only do it with my left.
It's incredible. And I'm glad you asked that.
Okay.
My On3 co-host, Ari Wasserman, asked the same question. He said, are we stupid to be assuming that the committee that has only done this once with 12 teams will just do what they did last year? And remember, last year, they protected conference title game losers.
Right.
SMU lost to Clemson in the ACC title game, dropping SMU to 11-2, and SMU remained in the field. SMU was the 11 seed, played Penn State.
That is not going to happen to the ACC championship game loser this year. I'd just like to point that out. Ari and I famously hold similar views about the college football industry. That's funny that he asked the same question. No, what I'm asking about here is there a window if, let's just say, Georgia beats the brakes off of Bama?
Okay, this is where, because we were trying to figure out if you were Miami, do you have any hope whatsoever?
Yeah, I'm trying to give Miami a path in. Yeah. I don't know if I can find one.
It is Georgia 50-0.
Okay.
Texas Tech 50-0.
Yeah. Big Ten doesn't matter. That's a completely semantic affair.
Georgia has to so thoroughly dominate Alabama that you forget that Alabama went on the road and beat Georgia earlier this season, which I do not think they'll be able to make them forget. Like, I don't think it's possible to beat them that thoroughly.
Okay. If that's the case, I don't know if I can establish a path for Miami. BYU, bubble team, has a path. Win, you're in. We don't have to worry about it.
Yes.
Do you want to do Texas or Notre Dame?
Texas is out. You could do Texas all you want. They're not getting in.
I don't think if I'm sitting here struggling to construct a scenario for Miami, I don't know if I can take a step down and then find one for Texas either. Certainly that would, and by the way, I didn't even bring up Vanderbilt at number 14.
Vanderbilt is 10-2 behind Texas, which beat Vanderbilt. They're honoring that particular head-to-head win, just not others. So let's, all right, Vanderbilt, Texas, and essentially Miami, you are done. All right? BYU, win and you're in. Let's move up to the Irish. Irish scenario for the Irish best case scenario this weekend. They moved down 1 to 10, and Bama moved up, which I thought was really interesting. Their best case scenario is chalk. They need Texas Tech to pound BYU, and they would love for Georgia to pound Alabama. Their worst case scenario is BYU wins and Alabama wins, because if that happens, they're out.
Okay, so as usual, the favorites,
unless Texas Tech is knocked out, then it becomes a Texas Tech or Notre Dame question.
Can that happen?
Can Texas Tech?
Can Texas Tech be knocked out completely?
I mean, the committee can do anything. They can watch Miami beat Notre Dame and continually rank Notre Dame ahead of Miami. So they can do anything.
Am I just going to have the perennially unpopular opinion that it's a week 1 game, and I think there's this invisible asterisk next to those week 1 games? We want you to play them.
There shouldn't be.
No. I know. We want you to play them. I think maybe, and this is just a hypothesis.
No, we don't want you to play them. Their actions are telling us that right now.
I know, and I saw like Herb Street freak out today because like the South Florida Alabama game got rescheduled. We're gonna have 10 months to discuss the ramifications of this. I don't think that we're shooing away these
dumping
games.
Non-conference games because they have to go to 9 conference games is not.
What did you expect? Yeah. So I don't think it's at a crisis point yet. I don't buy the Sarkisian argument because you have a cement shoes in the Florida loss.
But the thing is, like the Sarkisian argument and the Mario Cristobal argument dovetail. They go together because Sarkisian's like, why should we have scheduled Ohio State? And the answer to that would be, if you'd beaten Ohio State, then you'd be in.
Right.
But Notre Dame's like, hey, we beat Notre Dame, still not in.
There is something that I can't really put numbers or analysis to that just feels either, depending on your stance on Miami, cruel or funny because of the way that they were out last year. And then to think about, like, yes, they had bad inconsistent play. They did not have the thing I teased all year about like the Mario Cristobal brain fart game. They had like an empirically bad game on a Friday night against Louisville with a lot of turnovers.
Right, and the SMU game was
overtime. Yes, yeah. Overtime against a quality opponent that finished with like 8 or 9 wins. Right,
they were 8-4.
Yeah. Okay, so it isn't as dumb as it normally sounds for Miami. It really isn't. Yeah, I think maybe there's a pre-programmed bias for people who might be listening to this saying,
now what's interesting is their arguments actually go together, the Sarkisian argument and the Cristobal argument, but Cristobal still put Sarkisian in a body bag today because
I didn't see
Sarkisian
this.
was saying why Texas should be ahead of Miami, and Cristobal's like, we both played Florida. How'd that go for you?
Good for Mario. I've hung out with Mario. I wouldn't say Mario's he's not the best yes and guy at an improv show, but good for him for having, man, he had shooters. Way to go, Mario.
Yeah.
All right. Couple other questions here. I would have, I don't know if this is sort of back in hipster territory or not. This is actually a logistics question. Mm-hmm. Because of the scenario that we're facing that feels close to likely with the multi-loss Duke team in the ACC championship. I'm curious where maybe we would just have to like ask Hunter Yurachek or maybe they should supply us with this information. I would like the committee to keep going until we got all the way to both Duke, and this is where I'm headed with this, and I want to see how far apart Duke is from the two teams playing in the Mountain West Championship.
This is the hipster rabbit hole I wanted to send you down.
Okay, great. Fantastic.
Because
here I am.
I want to give you a hypothetical.
Okay.
You ready? You might want to write some of this down.
I've got paper in front of me. I'm ready.
Friday night, Troy pulls a massive upset.
Ooh, okay.
And beats James Madison.
All right. Number 25.
The American Championship game happens. Doesn't matter. Winner's in.
And losers out. Yeah.
The Mountain West Championship game is played on the Blue at Boise State. Mm-hmm. And the visiting UNLV Runnin' Rebels. I think they're just the Rebels. I don't think they're the Runnin' Rebels. Those are Jerry Tarkanian's teams. But Dan Mullen's Rebels beat the Broncos on the Blue.
Yes.
To go 11-2 and win the Mountain West.
Okay.
And then in Charlotte, North Carolina, Duke beats Virginia. And not just beats Virginia, but beats Virginia in a game reminiscent of one of our favorite ACC games. And I speak, of course, of that great Wake Forest Virginia Tech game that ended regulation in a 0-0 tie with Frank Beamer going like this.
I'm kind of doing a De Niro, but it was like bad weather and he was kind of, yes. Yeah. Sorry, if you're on audio, you have to watch the show.
Duke, yes, by the way, turn your TV on, home screen, Yahoo Sports Network, click that icon. You can watch us impersonating Frank Beamer
doing Robert De Niro, doing Frank Beamer.
Also, yahoosports.tv on your phone, on your tablet, on your laptop, any device, anytime, day or night, 24/7, 365. Yahoosports.tv is how you watch us do Frank Beamer impressions. Okay, so the game is like that. Okay. And Duke wins it 3-0 in overtime.
Okay. I like that you added overtime just to make us all
the 12th seed,
more.
Steven Godfrey?
I know who I would want the 12th seed to be. It would be the UNLV Runnin' Rebels, but I don't care what they're called. The Allegiant Stadium Runnin' Rebels under Daniel Mullen.
Anthony Calandria.
UT
Left
Chattanooga.
Virginia wound up in the playoff anyway.
Quality losses, right, Andy? That's a thing? Quality losses. Your losses are to
Boise
the other
State
team.
A quality loss? Is New Mexico a quality loss?
But you avenged it. You avenged it. I can't do this with a straight face. The committee, of course, is going to... The committee's not going to look at any Mountain West team with 2 conference losses and let them in unless they absolutely had to, which,
So you think Duke gets in right there?
Yeah. Because I'm confident that if the committee sits, this is why I asked the question, Andy. Where is Duke, and where are those 2 teams in the Mountain West?
And he goes, Dan Mullen makes the playoff before Florida.
Oh God! Wow. Sorry, Andy. Not that you care. Just meant that just wow.
Hey, look, good for him.
Oh, man. Right before he takes a plane to Happy Valley. No, I'm just kidding. All right. That's a joke. That's a joke. That's a joke. That's a joke. We'll get to it in a second.
No, we're going to... we're going to talk cookie money.
I know.
And its effect on coaching searches later.
It's going to get aggregated. I didn't mean that. I'll tell you when I mean it. Okay.
Steven Godfrey is reporting that Dan Mullen has been offered the Penn State job.
We've had this happen already this season where I make a joke on the pod.
Attention, dumb guy at Newsweek. Yeah. That's not what we're saying.
Okay. Going through the top 25 one last time, I feel like everyone reasonably was eliminated. Everyone's obsessed with this Duke scenario. What's funny is that no one is giving any play to the idea that, okay, Virginia can make the playoffs, which would be remarkable.
Can we talk? Let's talk about that.
Okay.
Can we?
Sure.
Because one, Tony Elliott is one of my favorite people in college football. If you know Tony Elliott's life story, it's pretty incredible. He overcame a lot as a child. Losing his parents, he was in the back of the car in the accident that killed them, and had to basically pick up his entire life, move it across the country, and turned himself into like a walk-on Clemson football player. He was then an engineer. He then got into coaching, helped Clemson win national titles, got the head coaching job at Virginia. Not long into the job, one of Virginia's former players murders 2 Virginia players.
Yeah. He's
dealt with this situation, which most coaches would have been crushed by.
Well, and Andy,
as well as anybody could.
Yeah. And he was also what, top 5 hot seat this year?
Top 5 hot seat this year.
Guaranteed.
Last year they did the thing that we've talked about some of these other schools doing, where they said, you know what? Instead of paying you to not work, we're going to put some money towards your roster and see how that goes. They go get Chandler Morris.
Yeah.
And, Chad Morris, former Arkansas head coach, former SMU head coach, former Clemson offensive coordinator, obviously worked with Tony Elliott at Clemson. That's Chandler Morris's dad. So there's the connection. Chandler Morris has been awesome for them. So if you want to, I know everybody's rooting for Duke because of the chaos.
Right.
But if you want to root for something else, root for Virginia to just win the thing and be the 11th seed.
Andy, 4 weeks in a row, they go to overtime in 3 of the games and win. And in the other game, they didn't go to overtime. They squeak out a win against the upset-minded Wazoo Cougars.
And
a week after Wazoo almost beat Ole Miss.
Yeah, and then they lose to Wake Forest in an absolute slobber knocker where they lost Chandler Morris earlier in the game.
Hey,
they have lived dangerously all year.
We've talked about that, though, because the committee seems to be very friendly to Mateer about that. I mean, if they win, they're in. We're not really worried about it. But I'm just saying, you're talking about considering losses, and everyone's talking about how horrible the ACC is. I will roll around in it like a pig, and you know what, and have a great time if Duke wins this game. If not, Virginia deserves to be in this playoff.
Yes, there's no question. If they win, they're in, and God bless them, because they have earned it by winning a bunch of really tight games. Now, the reason we are envisioning the scenarios that happen if Duke wins, and look, Virginia played Duke 2 weeks ago and beat them 34-17 on the road. So I have faith in Virginia here. But the reason that we are envisioning these scenarios is that Virginia has played a lot of really close games. Like, they played a game against North Carolina where Bill Belichick decides to go for 2 at the end because basically he's like, this is probably our best chance to win.
Yeah.
They stuffed them, and Virginia won that game.
That's the one where the knee was down on the extent, or he doesn't extend on the pylon touch because he's been coached not to. That's what I was told by coaching Twitter was telling me that's a Belichickian thing not to extend.
You coach your players to never extend the ball toward the pylon because it can be knocked out for a touchback unless it is the last play of the game.
That would have won the game. That is the
only exception.
Yeah, that would have won them the game, and we would have had another one of the 700 million ACC championship scenarios. If Virginia wins, they're going to be a fantastic story to talk about. We won't have the second ACC team to complain about. I think, honestly, the angst will come from the Power 2 supporters who want to see a chalkier, more helmet field if BYU pulls the upset. That's the one that I think is actually going to piss people off.
But I don't know you're going to get a lot of SEC complaints because they'll get 5 in that scenario.
Yeah, because you still have Oklahoma. Oklahoma becomes basically stay with me, like a sort of make good over last year if you're an SEC fan. And what it does is it messages in the offseason that the SEC, you can have the world's toughest environment, blah, 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 lose 2 out of 3 and still be able to make the playoff if you can turn it around in the third act of the season. So that would help the SEC from a messaging standpoint. And then obviously we got to mention this real fast. Ole Miss didn't get dinged. They moved up.
Yes.
Maybe they should have just gotten rid of them 2 weeks ago.
It was a question we were asking all weekend because they lost their head coach. I mean, how friggin' weird is that?
Well,
their head coach is LSU's head coach now. Pete Golding is the Ole Miss head coach in the playoff. Now, we did find out on Tuesday that Charlie Weiss Jr., who got on the plane and was saluted by many middle fingers as he got on the plane to go to Baton Rouge, is going to be back with Ole Miss. He's going to be LSU's offensive coordinator eventually, but he's going to be back with Ole Miss for the playoff. So Ole Miss will not have different play callers. And that was announced after the committee had already broken. But we began hearing that Charlie was going to call plays for Ole Miss last night. I'm sure the committee was told either last night or this morning about that. And so Ole Miss actually moved up 1 as Texas A&M fell.
I don't think that's the Charlie Weiss Jr. bump, to be clear, guys. Just so we're clear.
I think this was what was going to happen no matter what.
Yeah. He's not Lane Kiffin's not Jordan Travis. He's not on the field. He's not responsible directly for the actual throwing or catching of the football. And the committee reflected that. To go back to that crazy weekend, there was a little slyness. I don't know what the long-term play is going to be, but there's a little slyness on Keith Carter's part, depending on which ultimatum you believe. And right now there are actual conflicting narratives in the press between Keith Carter, Glenn Boyce, and just the Ole Miss establishment versus what
Team Ole Miss and Team Lane have told their stories very effectively through their various
what I would
why am I surrogates? That's the word they use in politics.
Friendly ears. What I would add to this conversation is that the one person who was sort of being wooed in the middle of all this was Weiss Jr. Now, some people at Ole Miss believe that's because Carter would love nothing more than to offer him a really fat deal, because I don't think he's officially signed anything yet at LSU. Now, he was removed from the masthead.
There was a big raise offered to stay at Ole Miss.
So there is a thought in certain Ole Miss circles that if he stays, they could maybe convince him to stay, as in if he stays through the next however many weeks as they go through the playoff, that he might actually stay. It's a little bit more of a jab in the eye of Kiffin. And he was the one, allegedly, where Carter said, hey, do what you need to. Get on that plane if you feel like you need to, but give me a call afterwards. That was the one where there was. It's funny. Charlie Weiss Jr., and we'll move on in a second, was the recipient of what Lane Kiffin actually wanted. Lane Kiffin wanted to get on the plane, go to Baton Rouge, stand next to the ESPN 100 recruit kid, the defensive tackle, and do all that. And I'm the next great head coach of LSU, and then come back and coach the playoff. Charlie Weiss Jr. was sort of actually extended that invitation by Ole Miss. That's very funny.
Right, because he's not the one who voluntarily left.
Oh, I think that I can tell you for a fact that Ole Miss,
because he can tell you, well, I was told I wouldn't have the job I was supposed to have next year if I did this.
Yes.
So
everyone's being very nice to Charlie Jr. right now, is what I'm reporting to you. Everyone is being, do what you need to. Come on back. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of that on both sides.
We're going to talk about what's happening in the coaching carousel, specifically with the job that isn't filled yet. Not one of the ones that just opened up because their coach left for somebody else. The one that's been open longer than most of the other ones were open.
UAB.
Not UAB.
Damn it.
We will talk about the Penn State job and why giant expensive cookies have factored into the Penn State search when we return. We are back at the College Football Inquirer, and I promised before the break that we would talk about how cookie money was affecting one of the major coaching searches of this cycle. Here's what happened. On Monday night, multiple outlets, including the one I work for, On3, got wind that Penn State is heavily pursuing Kalani Sitake at BYU. Was heavily pursuing Kalani Sitake at BYU. I had been told that Kalani was not going to make any decisions until after the Big 12 championship game. So this was probably not a case like Lane Kiffin, but it was an interesting one because Penn State would have to wait. And I don't know that Penn State wants to wait much longer because they fired James Franklin before Florida fired Billy Napier, before LSU fired Brian Kelly. they've been the big dog in this cycle, and they still don't have a coach. Kalani Sitake would be a great hire. He's phenomenal. He's been great at his alma mater. The idea that he would leave his alma mater, I think, was in doubt. So
yeah,
it's a big swing. One thing I didn't realize, and I apologize for this because I try to keep my thumb on the pulse of who all the big boosters are at every school. Godfrey,
oh, yeah, definitely.
Did not know Crumbl Cookie CEO Jason McGowan is a big BYU guy.
He's a Coug.
When this news breaks on Monday night, Jason McGowan writes on Twitter, "Some people are not replaceable. Sounds like it is time for me to get off to the sidelines and go to work." Later in the night, Jason McGowan tweets, "Why do you love Kalani? What does it mean for you to have Kalani Sitake as our head coach at BYU? Right now is the moment to let Kalani feel the love, respect, and gratitude of Cougar Nation. He's given everything to this program. Let's show him how much he means to all of us. To make it fun, I'm giving away 450 yard line seats and airfare to the Big 12 championship game for the 2 incredible responses. Share your heart. Let's lift Kalani together." Fast forward to Tuesday. My man Pete Nakos, my coworker at On3, reports that Kalani Sitake is indeed staying at BYU, and not just staying for what they were doing before.
Do we have a verb or a noun for when Nakos hits a scoop? We got to work on that.
We call them Nakosifications.
We need to take about 3 syllables out of that.
Yeah, we've been workshopping.
That needs to go back to the desk, sir. I'll work on it. I love young Nakos. Young Nakos, I mean, kind of sounds like a lesser known member of No Limit Records. Young Nakos.
If you saw Pete Nakos, if we had a photo of Pete Nakos right now, that would be even funnier.
Yeah, I sat next to him at Vandy LSU.
I'm imagining Pete Nakos driving the gold tank that drives on the basketball court to make him say on video.
Pete, when you hear this or see this, please know that I think you could definitely belong on the tank at No Limit Records, that your coworker was the one doubting your street cred in the 504. But so I digress.
Here's what Pete reports on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And by the way, BYU has officially announced a Kalani Sitake contract extension. Mm-hmm. They're a private school. They don't have to tell a squat about the exact numbers. But Pete reported that BYU is committing $10 to $15 million of NIL on top of revenue sharing. Big cookie money. New deal is expected to pay Sitake roughly $9 to $9.5 million annually over the course of the deal. Cookie money. And by the way, a BYU fan, at some point on Tuesday, because I've seen the receipt, DoorDashed a box of Crumbl cookies to Pat Kraft's office. Who's Pat Kraft? He's the athletic director of Penn State. Best sport in the world.
Best sport in the world. Also, the SEC gets too much attention because weird stuff like this happens all across the country. I was sitting in Joe Moorhead's office when he was the OC at Penn State on signing day when a bunch of Pitt students found the fax number for the football office. Pitt had flipped one kid that day. This was coming off of a year where that Pitt had won. This is early in the James Franklin era. And reams of paper with just sort of like, this is the Zodiac style F-bombs just kept pouring into the football office all day. It was very funny. So let's talk about Penn State seriously for a second.
No, before that, I want to give credit where credit is due.
Okay.
Garrett McClintock is the person who DoorDashed the cookies.
Okay.
He contributes to the 24/7 site that covers BYU. He's also the co-host of a podcast called Give 'Em Hell.
That's about as spicy as a BYU fan's going to get, right?
He's a data engineer at PDQ. So he used chicken finger money to buy cookies to send to the Penn State AD to celebrate cookie money, keeping Kalani Sitake in Provo.
If you're listening
Best
along
sport in the world.
And you've noticed Andy Staples' excited voice, it's because this is essentially his Michael Clayton moment. This is a conspiracy upon conspiracy with different food products. I've never seen you this excited. So Sitake's staying. Before we talk about Penn State, actually, I have one thing I wrote down. I think there's a category here, and maybe you can kind of help me describe the context for what I'm going for. You mentioned this real fast, describing the situation with Sitake. Had BYU not stepped up, I think he would have gone to Penn State. And had Vanderbilt
but not until Sunday, and
right,
probably not unless they lost.
Yeah. Well,
or he worked out an agreement where he could coach.
Yes. So, and then if Vanderbilt had not stepped up, I think Clark Lea would have gone somewhere, probably. I don't know if he was an A number one. Maybe Penn State.
Yeah, probably.
Maybe Penn State, that was a place where, let's say they had a cup of coffee together. Let's call it that.
Oh, while we're on the subject of Clark Lea.
Yeah.
Got some news today about Clark Lea and his recruiting.
Yeah, we're going to do that next segment.
Because they flipped.
Aren't we doing that in the next segment?
Yeah, we're doing that in the next segment.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for the next segment.
Steven Godfrey, recruiting reporter.
There you go.
I got 5-star quarterback within walking distance. I'm so spoiled. Okay, so Penn. So there's a through line here with BYU and Vandy. Alumni, both have elevated the programs in the modern era to places they had never really seen. Both have established more consistency, brand identity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I want to be careful in how I explain this to people because I get a lot of questions from individual fans of schools, just like you do. And it was like, my guy was never really going to leave, was he? Or we just needed to get off our butts. The answer is yes and yes. I think this is where, and maybe it's because I'm a little bit more sentimental towards these non-traditional teams that are having success. I know, look, BYU's won a national title. I get it. But, I think people understand where I'm going with this. Vandy's been a wonderful story. In Nashville, it's been a wonderful story in college football. Diego potentially could win the Heisman next week. Maybe. I think it's a great thing. I think that both of those coaches needed to go out and test the market for their own value. Also, in the case of someone like Clark Lea, who is a CAA client, that's how you do it. That's what you're supposed to do. Like, you need to go out and you need to go talk to those people and you need to raise the awareness of what you're doing. I never really thought Clark would end up somewhere like an Auburn. I kind of thought Clark could end up somewhere like Penn State, or if something were to
Clark Lea, Kalani Sitake, by the way, both people at their alma maters.
Yeah.
And they didn't just go there, they played there.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah. And this is what I'm getting at. I think the best possible situation has happened for both BYU and Vanderbilt here, which is that they have forced, with their success, more investment in a football program that has already shown proof of concept. And I think that's a nice path forward as we're spending all this money, sometimes stupidly and sometimes in an ill-advised way. Now, Penn State, Andy, let's take a deep breath here. You said this in the break. I don't know if I've yet afforded it this status because this is the highest of crazy status. It's hard to do this without using swear words. There is one coaching search.
Crazy?
Correct. Yes, sir. That's okay. I'm literally not looking into the camera so I don't laugh and start swearing. There is one search that stands above all others, and that is 2017 Year of Our Lord, Knoxville, Tennessee. You invoked this in the break. Do you feel like we are approaching that level in Happy Valley?
We might be. Now, if they land the plane here in the next couple days, maybe not. The coaching search you speak of course, is the Tennessee search after Butch Jones was fired.
Yes.
It ultimately landed on Jeremy Pruitt, but there was a new athletic director at Tennessee.
Yes.
By the
Phil
time
Fulmer.
That happened.
Yeah. By the way, we just left out like 85 things in the middle of that. Mike Leach. We'll tell that story some other time.
Well, no. We do need to tell the broad strokes of it.
Okay.
John Curry hired Greg Schiano to be the Tennessee coach.
Yeah, and people lost
when
their
word
minds.
leaked that he was hiring Greg Schiano, the Tennessee fan base revolted.
Yeah.
They connected it loosely to a triple hearsay piece of the Jerry Sandusky investigation that was totally unfair to Greg Schiano. The reason they didn't want Greg Schiano is he would have not been a good coach at Tennessee.
Correct.
His history suggests that someone who, when he was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coach, like Albert Breer, who covers the NFL for SI, was telling me, he's like, what do you mean he wouldn't have been successful at Tampa? I remember before a game at Tampa Bay, he was just yelling at me about something. I'm like, do you know the difference between Nick Saban and Greg Schiano? Nick Saban doesn't know you exist 2 hours before a game.
Correct. The only memory I have of Greg Schiano as an NFL coach, the only memory is when he told his players to dive on the kneel down. You know what I'm talking about? In the last seconds of the game?
Yes.
And try and cut across the line. So,
But the reason I say this, and it's not a shot at Greg Schiano as a head coach, period. He's actually a good head coach. He's been good at Rutgers. It is that he would not have liked being Tennessee's coach because Tennessee coach faces probably as much pressure as a New York Yankees manager.
Yeah.
It is a very pressure-packed job. It is a nasty, vitriolic media market. If things are not going well, you get just pummeled.
Yeah, and just as a quick aside before I go into this other thing, East Tennessee is magical because it doesn't really care about what's going on in Nashville or Atlanta or Charlotte. They stay on Vols football and Vols Lady Vols basketball 24/7, 365.
Oh, they love the men's team now too.
Well, and Vitello in baseball. But what I'm saying is it is all Vols all the time in that cluster of cities, Johnson City, Knoxville, like a little bit down to Chattanooga. So you are under a microscope. My Phantom Island co-host and Florida alum, Ryan Naney, often will occasionally just say, as an aside, because he jokingly reminded me about Chip Kelly getting fired last week. He's like, what if Chip Kelly had to live in Gainesville? Like, how fast would that have ended?
Chip Kelly knew himself well enough to turn down the Florida job.
That's why he did, and a lot of people didn't understand at the time. It wasn't his estimation of the program. It was a self-assessment that some of these jobs...
he would have been fired in year 2 had he taken the Florida job.
I don't think, back to our point at hand, that Penn State is quite there yet. I'm not saying, look, the kindling is there. We just maybe haven't had the match. And I think the match would be a really, really ill-advised hire that they rush because they're running out of time.
Yeah. So the rest of the story is Curry then talks to multiple people. There are DMs from Mike Gundy. Mm-hmm. There's contact with Dave Doran, who at the time was at NC State. I'm missing, and there's another one I'm missing in there, and I'm blanking on who it is. But then he wants Mike Leach.
Yep.
He is going to California. He's going to meet Mike Leach at Marina Del Rey.
Good George
I know
Strait
this.
song.
I have a text message from Mike Leach at 4:30 in the morning, Eastern time, the day they're supposed to meet, that says, who the hell is in charge there? The meeting never happens because John Curry is called home to Knoxville to be fired. They then install former coach Phil Fulmer, who had been working behind the scenes to usurp John Curry as the new AD, and he then hires Jeremy Pruitt.
Which wasn't the first time.
We're not there yet with Penn State.
It was not the first time that Phil Fulmer worked behind the scenes to usurp someone in a leadership position in Knoxville. Now we're talking about
it is literally how he got the head coaching job of the football.
Correct. That dude has been stabbing people in the back and throwing them in the holler since he got there. All right. Penn State's not that bad yet. I would cast maybe half an eye to the west, but also maybe to the south, to Virginia. As we record this, now as we were recording our last episode, it broke that, isn't it fun that the what do we call these people? Breaking news reporters have like adopted a new variable set of verbs. So targeting.
So finalizing.
Targeting. Yeah, no, finalizing comes after targeting.
Has zeroed in on?
Targeting, it follows circling.
Ooh. Yes.
Anyway, I'm making fun of a bunch of our friends. We were targeting, and we were targeting moving to finalizing. This is like the old terrorism code.
Top target.
Emerged as top target. That's my favorite one. Sorry, I'm being mean right now. I shouldn't do that. Anyway, one of those verbs was being used to describe JMU head coach Bob Chesney and UCLA the last time we recorded a show on Sunday.
He had emerged as UCLA's top target.
Then they were going to circle a deal to finalize.
They already circled him. He then emerged, but they had not yet finalized.
See, do you think circling means they circled his name on a board, or I'm thinking circling the way that a flight would upon arrival?
Him, like,
yeah. Okay. Oh man, I'm gonna get a bunch of angry DMs. Okay.
They had not yet begun to finalize.
We have not yet begun to finalize.
Yeah.
All right, Normandy.
When will then be now?
Bob Chesney has not signed anything at UCLA as of this recording. Is the only thing I'm going to point out. Now, if I was maybe desperately looking around as the bar lights were going up and I'm Penn State, I might pick the guy that Andy and I, we framed a segment around this about a month ago. I know he's at JMU. I know where he came from, and they were like, it was Holy Cross. It was that school. Assumption. Salve Regina, which I pronounced incorrectly and got admonished for by a bunch of Northeasterners, and I'm not even going to say it this time. Nor will I say, is it Narragansett? It's a great beer. I get like Bostonians' accents aren't weird. Why are you making fun of this redneck? Anyway.
You park your car next to the bar.
Just a strange, weird people. Okay. just skip the Syracuse. Just skip the American job. Just skip
the Boston College.
Skip the Boston. Yeah, because Boston College may not be the best lily pad right now. Just skip it. Don't do it. If you believe in this guy and you can see the forward momentum, yes, you would like him to maybe be a little bit more seasoned. And Penn State is like, this is a word I use too much, but I really feel like it fits here. Penn State is an apparatus. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of factions. You got the old Joe bots. You got people who have been disenfranchised. You got big time donors who.
You've got a new president who, though, is very aggressively in favor of football being really good and willing to give you resources.
Which is why Beaver Stadium kind of finally got the glow up that it's needed for a long time. Basically, the world's largest erector set. So I would just go, just a hypothetical, free suggestion. I have yet to send an invoice for any of my committee search work, unlike Nick Saban. Just maybe hire this guy now and put a seasoned head coach around him as a special assistant. I'm not kidding. Plenty of young coaches do this. I know Justin Fuente is like a pejorative now, but he had a really good blueprint when he was at Memphis before he got hired at Vodtech, a job he should not have taken. He hired nothing but basically veteran former head coaches in his positions as his coordinators and as a special assistant. So because he would say outright, I know how to do certain things, but I know that I don't know everything. So I need to find people who know those things, and I'm going to listen.
We are watching it happen with Clark Lee and Jerry Kill at Vanderbilt over the past 2 years.
Yeah, and it's so weird that in corners of the internet, people are dinging Lee. Dude, you're the head coach and you're winning. Who cares? Like,
right.
You made that decision.
Dabo did it with Woody McCorvey when he got hired at Clemson. Woody McCorvey hadn't been a head coach, but he had been a position coach everywhere.
Yeah.
He'd seen everything.
Andy, I was embedded at Clemson. It was the thumb game that going into South Carolina is the thumb win with Tosh Boyd. I was doing like a week-long profile on Tosh Boyd, and I was in the facility for 4.5 days. And I can tell you firsthand that Chad Morris, at the time, the OC, then went on to Arkansas SMU, and then Brent Venables, now the head coach at Oklahoma, they were head coaching their respective units.
Yes.
Delegating is not that's not a sin. I would say it's actually a pretty good idea. So Chesney, with the amount of money that we've seen that Penn State can spend on coordinators, Andy, go hire this guy and then go get 2 veteran coordinators. This to me doesn't seem as buyer beware as it feels like the Nittany Lions got from it the first time they met.
Right. And I asked you, and I've asked some other folks in the process here in the last few minutes before we started talking about this, is this similar to Manny Diaz's situation? There's that name again. Remember Manny Diaz took the Temple job. I took it, got introduced.
Yeah.
And then the Miami job opened. And he had clearly been the best candidate for the Miami job at the time. And Miami's like, we're just going to hire you anyway. And they paid his Temple buyout. Like, if you've not yet begun to finalize, there's no buyout to pay. As long as you haven't signed, and this is a three little letters that coaching search time we hear a lot. An MOU, a memorandum of understanding. Which is essentially your short form contract that allows you to start working and then to start paying you. If you haven't signed that yet, you are still a potential somebody else's coach.
I met the new dean at the Ole Miss Journalism School earlier this year, my alma mater, and she asked, what would you add to a sports writing curriculum? And I said, 6 hours of contract law. Because think yes. about if you and I had known that at like 22.
Liquidated damages.
Offset. Mitigate.
Mitigation.
We learned these words, but we had to learn them the hard way. As I record this.
Key man clause.
Clark Lee was just introduced at the Nashville Predators game. This just popped up like 2 minutes ago, and the place gave him a standing ovation. So to take this back to the beginning of the segment, BYU feels that way about Kalani Sitake for a good reason. He loves that place too. I don't say that a lot. I really don't, because I've walked into the sports writer trap before of believing the guy before he goes out the door. This is not the case with Sitake and BYU. I think he wanted to be there the whole time, and he was doing the right thing for himself and his career by going down the road with someone like Penn State.
But also shaking the cookie box a little bit.
Yeah.
To shake some extra pennies loose for the roster.
And they should do that because, like, look, complacency kills at every level of this sport. Okay? And you heard this coming out when Brent Pry got fired at Virginia Tech, and it's been talked about now with Franklin because they just hired someone in James Franklin who's going to complain his way into getting what he wants in every corner of the job. Was like, well, we didn't need to do it this way when Frank was winning games, talking about Frank Beamer. That mindset, no matter where you're at, will kill your program faster than NCAA probation will. So I think this is good for two alumni to push on their institutions to spend more money and invest and modernize.
Now, there are openings that must be filled because jobs have been filled. Penn State is the one that hasn't been filled yet, but John Summerall goes to Florida. Ryan Silverfield goes to Arkansas. Alice Golish goes to Auburn. Eric Morris leaving North Texas, going to Oklahoma State. North Texas is bringing in former Troy and West Virginia coach Neil Brown. So congratulations to Neil Brown. Tosh Lupoi getting the job at Cal. Well, before we get to the Tosh Lupoi and Will Stein of it all, the Oregon coordinators, let's talk about these American jobs, because you and I have heard the same thing, and we find it very interesting.
Head coaches.
The candidates for these American jobs, all head coaches or former head coaches, not coordinators, which is strange.
We are maybe in the middle of this trend right now. I'm curious where you think we're at. I think the anxiety around the money being spent at these programs is so high that they are kind of demanding that you have previous head coaching experience so you don't run into a situation where you get someone who doesn't know how to manage a system. Now, that's understandable. There are some drawbacks, I think, to cutting out particular candidates. But rather than comment on the trend, I would just say, like, from what I've heard today about leading candidates to fill these jobs, other than Neil Brown already has been announced. I think when we started recording, they officially announced it. But jobs like Tulane, jobs like South Florida, those are pivotal positions because they are always going to circle that 12 spot as long as we have a G5 12 spot. I know it's not technically a G5 spot, but they are always going to be involved in that conversation. USF especially, Andy, that's the job to me in the group of five. They are finally glowing up.
Admitted to the AAU, which has nothing to do with grassroots basketball, the Association of American Universities, very prestigious group of research institutions. That probably helps them if they would like to move up in conference level down the road. So, yes, USF's a very interesting spot. But yeah, we're hearing a lot of head coaches and people who've been head coaches as candidates for these jobs, which brings us to Cal and Kentucky, which are hiring Oregon coordinators. Cal is taking Tosh Lupoi. Kentucky has hired Will Stein. Tosh Lupoi is the defensive coordinator at Oregon. Will Stein is the offensive coordinator at Oregon. Both of them had been in the position where we thought they were going to become head coaches pretty soon. Lupoi makes perfect sense at Cal. Played there, was an excellent coach there under Jeff Tedford. And furthering it, remember, one Jaron Chiave Sungapolatelli, the quarterback at Cal, who would be sought, like if he entered his name in the transfer portal, it would look like you put a cow in a river full of piranhas.
Surely that wouldn't happen.
But maybe it won't happen now because Tosh Lupoi, one of the coaches involved in his recruitment to Oregon, where he actually signed, he had been going to Cal, he flipped to Oregon, he signed with Oregon, and then got to Oregon and was like, nope, I'm going to go to Cal. I think they got a shot to keep him by hiring Tosh
Lupoi. Tosh Lupoi, just as an aside, one day I would love to sit down with him for the book I would love to write on the 13 games that Urban Meyer coached in the NFL, because he was on the JAG staff.
He was on that staff, yeah.
Which was just one of the most ill-fated voyages I've ever seen in American sports. That one made sense. Tavita Pritchard at Stanford made obvious sense. That was one that kind of felt like it was destined.
Former Stanford quarterback.
Let's tie it back. Let's tie Tosh in, although I don't know how you would describe him. Maybe it'll work what I'm about to do. We got a tree. I've been screaming about somebody needs to develop a tree of coaches. We could start kind of a new trend. It's the Dan Lanning tree, because you got Kenny still sitting down at Arizona State, who I personally think had Florida State opened, maybe that's the direction they go in. A lot of people, like this guy, said that all back a week ago when there were like 11 SEC jobs open, that Kenny Dillingham, the head coach at Arizona State, should have, probably received a little bit more examination from those schools. So we now have a Dan Lanning tree, Andy. Everything. I'm not trying to counteract what we said because we're definitely in I need a head coach right now. Like I've got to have a head coach.
Tosh is not really Tosh is part of the Dan Lanning tree. Dan Lanning himself and Kenny Dillingham are Mike Norvell tree.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a touch of like, obviously, there's some Kirby employment in there, and like, but if we're looking for the ideology, some trees were hatched by scheme, some trees were hatched by like culture, like however you want to describe Saban. Saban's tree wasn't a scheme; it was an ideology.
Saban's schematic and cultural.
I would say ideology.
Lanning's is definitely
ideology,
vibes, culture, ideology.
Yeah. Whereas like Meyer was a little bit more kind of came on nationally because like, oh, he's running this funny offense, and oh, this guy at Utah, well, he was at Bowling Green, and now Notre Dame wants to do this, like, and then you looked up, and then you had Dan Mullen go to State, and so on. So I think we have the beginnings of a tree that I think will, if this works, I don't know, because like Tosh is a Cal alumnus. And from what I heard about that search, Ron Rivera kind of had this open and shut for a while. So that one may not apply here. But I think Will Stein at Kentucky, Andy, is a really, really interesting study. Culturally, there may not be a more different team from this day to this day. Well, LSU, but we'll just go ahead and put them off. And they're in their own solar system right now. But Kentucky, culturally, is about to undergo just a total transfusion. And it's going to be fascinating to see what aspects of that Oregon vibe, for lack of a better term, player-focused, NIL-focused, very modern, aggressive offense. Hey, man, we're going to make a hype video and behind the scenes, and we're gonna do a ton of TikToks and all this kind of stuff, and it's going to look like a movie trailer every week. Is that coming to the Bluegrass? Is that what we think is about to happen?
Those cinematic reviews of the games, the recaps of the game are incredible.
They're so good. I love them. Although I really do want to see I want to see all the footage from after that Indiana loss. Release the Indiana cut. It's like the Snyder cut. Release the Indiana cut.
Yeah, well, hopefully it's better than the Snyder cut. See,
it wasn't that bad.
It's best viewed in 4:3 because that's what I watched in black and white.
There was a whole football game in there. Hey, assistant coach, I'll tell you later, on a working staff, when that thing came out, there's a whole thing in the Snyder cut where Wisconsin loses a football game to Gotham City, and then a coach was DMing me from the Big Ten and be like, "We're even slow in movies." Talking about Big Ten speed. Sorry, that was I was way down the rabbit hole. Zack Snyder is a Wisconsin fan. He's a big college football fan.
So
Will Stein making cool videos. Think about how different that's going to be for the Kentucky fan base to receive versus Mark Stoops. Like, there's a lot left in terms of like the way he builds out his staff. I know he just hired the OC from UTSA, so I have a pretty good idea of what they're going to be running on that side of the ball. And I don't know how much of... Here's the question I've got.
Will Stein, by the way, was the OC at UTSA before he went to Oregon. Yeah.
It's the guy who replaced him. His name escapes me. I didn't write it down. But I guess here's what I'm asking or kind of positing. Can Dan Lanning create a tree? Or is the stuff that we're seeing in Eugene, is that bespoke to him? Because he shares a lot of that ideology with Kenny. And I think Kenny went in and performed a culture change at Arizona State, too, after Herm Edwards, and it worked. And remember all the headlines last year, the kid whose like car broke down, and then Kenny's out on Twitter saying like, where's the NIL at? This guy's got to literally drive to practice. Like, that's the modern coach, we think, in the NIL era. And I'm curious, is that coming to the SEC next year?
Possibly. Justin Burke, by the way, is the offensive coordinator you were naming.
Sorry.
I do think now it's interesting because we sort of ignore Kirby Smart as kind of one of the young guns.
It's the hair.
Kirby ain't that old because he's been a head coach for 10 years. He was in his 30s when he got the job.
You know the answer, right? I can't play over under with you. Like, how old is Kirby? Do you know the answer?
He's 48 or 49.
He's 49. Okay. I was going to do like an over.
So yeah, he was in his 30s when he got the Georgia job. So this is the next version of that. Will Stein's even younger. First college football meme to be hired as a head coach.
Yes, I put this in our chat today.
Will Stein, when he was a walk-on quarterback at Louisville, going like this to the camera.
So if you guys Google Will Stein Louisville, he was a walk-on quarterback. It was the Sky Cam on a night game, and in the infancy of Every Day Should Be Saturday, Spencer Hall and Holly Anderson I think they grabbed it first, and then it just kind of lived for a while. It just went on, and then Louisville fans actually made it. Do you know what a Tifa is in soccer? It's when they paint a giant banner in the stands and hold it up, and it has a theme or something. So Louisville fans basically took that photo and made a cartoon of him doing this for home games as like a Tifa, and it just became a meme. Amazing. And when I knew about that when it happened in 2011, and I knew who Will Stein was, I did not realize that was the same person.
Oh, the first time I had him on my show as Oregon's offensive coordinator, we asked him about the photo.
Yeah. Really? Okay. See,
he embraces. He loves it.
Okay. I completely forgot. The other one that I think is going to blow people's minds is, oh God, where is he right now? He left South Alabama. It's the former Alabama quarterback who does the spot-on Saban impersonation, Rob Ezell.
Rob Ezell, the offensive coordinator at Wake Forest.
Yes.
Yeah.
One day he's going to be a head coach, and everyone's going to go, the guy who did the Saban impersonation?
Godfrey. One day soon.
Yeah.
He's going to be a head coach.
Because Wake kicked ass this year. He could be a G5 head coach.
Jake Dickert, great job. By the way, John Curry, who we besmirched, talking about that Tennessee searcher. John Curry hired Jake Dickert. That was an excellent hire.
It was, absolutely.
Right. We have one more thing to talk about. The number one quarterback recruit in the country will be signing on Wednesday. He was committed to Georgia when we all woke up Tuesday morning. He's signing with Vanderbilt. We'll talk about it when we come back.
Anchor down.
We are back at the College Football Inquirer. One other big piece of news on Tuesday. Jared Curtis, the number one quarterback recruit in the country in the class of 2026, and he is ranked number one by all of the major recruiting services. So it is unanimous that he is the number one quarterback prospect in this class. He had been committed to Georgia. He actually committed to Georgia, decommitted from Georgia, recommitted to Georgia. But as of late, all season long, basically, Vanderbilt kept the pressure on, kept saying, hey, you could replace Diego Pavia here next year. Godfrey, you live right down the street from this guy. He's obviously really good. He's playing a state championship game on Thursday.
Nashville Christian.
But Jared Curtis flips from Georgia to Vanderbilt, which is something, if I had said that 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that the number one quarterback prospect in the country flipped from Georgia to Vanderbilt, I would have been committed. Like, you would have called and said, something's wrong with Andy. He's lost his mind. He's delusional.
Because Vandy didn't have Vandy didn't have Bagman back then. I can confirm that. Now, had it been 100 years ago and he suddenly owned a railroad, maybe we'd be in business. Or a horse farm. Shout out to Bill Meade. This is great, I think. I have always made a joke about how I'm biased for Vanderbilt because I live next door, and how great would it be to see a nationally ranked, or I used to joke and say, I would love to leave my house, walk over to the stadium and see nationally relevant, like, title implication football. And I can now. And that really is amazing. You do like the speaking events where you go and you go to booster clubs or whatever, and people
Touchdown club,
yeah, that kind of stuff. Like, it's been a while, but people ask what's the biggest and most important game you ever saw? And I had kind of a collections of basically in the eras that you and I have reported through in college football. But that Vanderbilt Alabama game, I think, is going to go down as one of those markers of the sea change into NIL and into the portal and how we're going to define this era. I said this, I don't know, a couple of days ago on social, and I can't even remember what it was in reference to, but this idea that Vanderbilt's going to fall apart and go back into 3-win obscurity when Diego leaves is insane. They are spending money. The extension on Lee, I think, is the first bit of evidence there, but they are really guys, I'm telling you, I'm not saying it's hard to contextualize this.
This is the second.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, getting a premier quarterback. I need to jump in real fast also and say a lot of Georgia fans were on social today saying high school quarterback recruiting doesn't matter anymore. I think that's a bit much. I think that's, as the youth say, copium.
I mean, isn't Georgia starting a former 4-star quarterback who's pretty darn good?
Yeah.
But I mean, that's part of the reason for this. Jared Curtis can go start for Vanderbilt next year. And he is the level of recruit where if you are Vandy and you pay him, you do have to start him as a true freshman. Georgia does not. Right. Georgia has Gunnar Stockton playing really well right now. Gunnar Stockton's probably coming back to Georgia next year, probably not going to the NFL. And I mean, he will go to the NFL eventually, but he's probably coming back to Georgia for next season. And he's really good. So the job's not open.
I'm not going to speak to something I don't know about. And I see a lot of Georgia fans saying, well, he did this because he wasn't guaranteed playing time right away, so he's going to go to the weaker program with the worst depth chart. I have no idea if any of those claims are true.
That's how the economics of the sport work now.
I think it's a very different situation now, and it's not about playing time, sure, but I also think that maybe a better offer was offered by the Commodores.
Remember who the other bidder was for Jared Curtis when he recommitted to Georgia? It was Oregon.
Ah, okay. So this kid might be good.
Was already pretty good.
This kid might be pretty good, right? I would also that might be true. That you can have Trinidad Chambliss now, right? You can find them in the slush pile. But after the way that Gunnar Stockton has developed this year and what I saw standing at you were there too at the Texas game.
Mm-hmm.
And not to knock Miami. I know we talked about Miami at the outset and their situation. I might defer to Georgia's long-term strategies on quarterback management here. I'm not saying that this kid is bad because Georgia didn't get him, but if Georgia feels confident about Stockton, we are also moving, Andy, into an era of we got to manage our funds, right? We got to spend. We got to spend selectively.
And Georgia has a good starting quarterback in 2026, which means you have time to figure out your 2027 plan.
Yeah, and kids can transfer. It's not the end. It's not the end. So I think this is a net positive. I don't see a problem with this. I know people are
This is what, I'll call back to Andy Schwartz, who was an economist who worked for the plaintiffs in the O'Bannon trial and worked for the plaintiffs in the House trial. He always said, all of you people who keep saying that paying the players will allow the same three programs to get all the good players. No, that's what the old rules where you couldn't pay them created.
Correct.
Paying the players will cause people to make decisions based upon various incentives, of which money is now one.
Yes.
So in this case, money's an incentive, but playing time, which always was an incentive before, and was kind of the only way you could get somebody to go to the quote unquote lesser program before. Now it's both.
I want to put aside the old black market stuff for a second. God knows you and I could talk about that all night. The free market encourages competition, which would therefore, I love that one class I loved in college was macroeconomics, weirdly. Free market would encourage this kind of competition, which would then foster development of parity within competing entities. And isn't that exactly what we're seeing on the field now?
At a certain level.
In the SEC.
Right. In the SEC and the Big Ten. Yes.
Yeah. But inside the SEC, that's
very much so.
That's been the boilerplate this year of why we need 11 SEC teams in the playoff, LOL, or whatever.
Yeah.
Look what we deal with every week.
The gap between 1 and 16 is much more narrow than the gap used to be between 1 and 8.
Regardless of their record, there is something. I'm wading dangerously close to a territory I don't want to be in, which is this sort of pro SEC, pro Big Two person. You do a show with Ari, I'm sure you hear that enough. But Texas has a bad loss this year. But have you seen the players on that bad loss team? That's a really talented bad loss team.
I live in the town they live in.
Right.
So yes, I actually see them at Chipotle every once in a while. They're pretty impressive.
It's pretty ridiculous. There is something to this that every week it is becoming the NFL, where the Jets suck, but the Jets are still filled with really good football players.
Yeah. So I know that hurts you to say.
It does.
All of that. It's okay.
But
it is fascinating.
No, okay. I know that was a rib. I'm okay acknowledging that and giving that its appropriate space within our postseason structure and our attention. And I don't ever bring things to the show that are too niche to not carry what we call the A block of the show. I just also think let's still have a space. Let's have a space for a Tulane. Let's have a space for the Ashton Genty Boise team. And we are. To wrap up today's show, hey, guess what, Andy? We might have 2 spaces this weekend.
We're going to bring it full circle. That's right.
Yeah. And the SEC is really good at football. Totally okay to have both of those thoughts in your brain at the same time.
All of these things can be true.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
that's what makes this all so interesting. So
it's really fun to watch New Mexico. That's not a crime, guys.
Except they weren't high enough in Bill Connolly's.
I was about to say, you know what we need to we need to use our platform in the waning minutes. Bill Connolly hates the New Mexico Lobos. I'm my producer. Clip that. And I'm going to put it on social.
That's so mean.
Why did you do that, Bill? And he was telling me the whole time.
The formula. The formula just had the numbers fed into it.
I actually have to cop to this. Is a bit like he hit me up as soon as the tiebreaker scenario went in. Can we complain
for those who don't know, the Mountain West decides its two championship game teams. It had 4-way tie, a composite of a bunch of different advanced metric predictive ranking systems. And
Bill sees SP Plus is one of those, and the numbers have just disliked. I hosted a pod with Bill for years, and sometimes it was usually Iowa that we would get these horrible emails from Iowa fans. Why do you hate us? The numbers just don't favor. Yes, the numbers just don't favor certain teams sometimes. I want to pose one more question before we get out of here. One more thing I had written down. Do you remember divisions?
How could I forget the ACC Coastal, which once had 7 champions in 7 years?
You asked me at the beginning of the show, or you said really, because I asked
different teams win the championship.
I asked you at the beginning of the show. I was like, okay, if we can't build a Miami resume, well, I'm not going to do Vandy or Texas. Don't you think maybe Miami might be in this game if there were divisions? Maybe.
Possibly. Miami might also be in this game if the ACC did their tiebreakers the way the American does their tiebreakers. And I was actually asked that question. I was on SiriusXM with Dallin Cuff and Roddy Jones, who both follow the ACC very closely.
Roddy was a Yellow Jacket. Yeah.
Roddy was a Georgia Tech running back.
Yeah.
And they asked me, should the ACC do that? And I said, I don't think you should, because you're essentially admitting you're a second-class citizen at that point.
True.
So it's probably kind of philosophically dangerous to do that. I also don't think this is going to happen again with the 5 loss. Well, while the ACC is what it is now, which is probably only going to be a few more years, I wouldn't count on another 5-loss team in your championship game. I would just assume that they're going to be a little more standard from here on out. But it was a very thought-provoking question, because why wouldn't you just say, okay, the 2 highest ranked teams in the college football playoff ranking, we're just going to put them in the championship. So you would have Miami, Virginia in your championship game, and the winner would definitely be making the playoff.
Do you remember when the ACC formed its then sort of modern structure by raiding the Big East? Do you remember this? This is 20 years ago now, and I always laugh about the ACC championship game. They had it designed, and they were like, it's going to be Florida State, Miami all the time. It's going to be Miami, Virginia Tech, Florida State, and those title game combinations almost basically never happened.
Miami, Virginia Tech were in the same division.
Yes, so in the initial one, when they came over. Well, that was because they wanted that game to happen every year. But remember, everybody thought it would be Florida State, Miami over and over again. And it never once happened.
Hasn't happened yet.
You got Matt Ryan's BC. You got the Jim Grobe Wake Forest era. You got all of these weird peripherals, like just odd, non-impactful ACC stories that are fun to like. It's fun for us to have a bit about them, and then they would go play in the Orange Bowl. So it's always been a poorly constructed football league. I don't know what the solution is, but I think buried somewhere in there, you just said it very quickly. I don't know how much longer we're going to have to talk about it anyway.
That's true. But the change is what we're here for. The change is what we talk about. The change is what Ross does such a great job reporting on. And we're going to be here to help explain it the whole time. So we learned a lot today. We're going to learn a lot more tomorrow on National Signing Day. And we'll be back on Thursday. We got to preview championship games. The coaching carousel will still be spinning. Maybe Penn State will have a coach. Who knows? We'll talk to you then.